My name is Lucia Bradford. I'm 18 years old, and I'm a freshman majoring in psychology at a small college in Northern California. Most people go into psychology because they want to help others heal. Me, I want to understand why some wounds never bleed, why a person can smile at you while quietly cutting pieces off your soul. I don't like dwelling on the past, I really don't. But if I had to choose one moment that split my life cleanly into before and after, it would be my 18th birthday. Funny thing is, there was nothing special about that day, at least on the surface. The sky was clear. Classes went on as usual. My phone buzzed with a few casual birthday texts from classmates and one cheesy meme from my boyfriend Evan. It all looked so normal, ordinary. But sometimes, the days that look the most ordinary are the ones that rip your life apart. I still remember getting off the bus that afternoon, my backpack a little heavier than usual, my mind wandering to the tiniest of hopes. Not a party, not gifts, just a small cake. Maybe a sticky note on the kitchen counter in my mother's hurried handwriting. Happy birthday, Lucia. Love, Mom. That would have been enough. Just proof that I existed in her mind today. I walked through the front gate of the house I'd grown up in, the house I thought of as ours. And the second I stepped inside, that small, fragile hope shattered. My stepfather, Brian, was already waiting on the front porch. In his hand, he held my backpack by the strap. The strap twisted like he'd yanked it off a hook with more force than necessary. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how my day was. He didn't even say happy birthday. He just let the backpack drop to the tile floor with a dull thud and said, in a voice as dry and rough as sandpaper, "I've taken care of you long enough. Get out of my house." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. I just stood there, frozen, my fingers numb around my bus card. Then the words sank in, one by one, like stones falling into water. My mouth opened, but all that came out was a cracked whisper. "What? You can't just throw me out. This is my mom's house. It's my house too." Brian smirked, just one corner of his mouth twitching like I'd told some cute little joke. "Go ask your mom," he said, folding his arms. "You're 18, you're grown. That means you're on your own now. I don't owe you a damn thing." I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, loud and frantic, like a timer counting down to the end of something I hadn't even realized was fragile. Before I could say anything else, another voice drifted down from above. "Oh, really? You sure about that?" I looked up. On the second-floor balcony, Casey, Brian's daughter from his previous marriage, was leaning against the railing. Phone in hand, gum popping loud enough for me to hear each sticky snap. She stared at me like I was some stray cat scratching at the wrong door. "She already agreed," Casey called down, her tone dripping with satisfaction. "Don't believe me? Call her." Her words landed like a slap I had seen coming for years but kept pretending wouldn't hit. I swallowed hard. My hands curled into fists at my sides. "You don't have the right to kick me out," I managed, trying to make my voice steady. "Neither of you do." By then, Casey was already walking down the stairs. She stopped right in front of me and jerked her chin toward my backpack on the floor like it was trash. "If you forgot anything," she said coolly, "you better come back before tonight. That room's mine tomorrow." She turned away, but not before throwing one last line over her shoulder, her lips curling into that same crooked, smug smile. "Happy birthday, Lucia." For a long moment, I just stood there staring at that old backpack, lying on the tiles like the punchline to a very cruel joke. I didn't bend down to pick it up. I didn't walk past them into the house. I just stood. Like if I stayed still long enough, time would rewind and this would turn out to be some sick misunderstanding. 10 minutes passed. Maybe more. The air around me grew heavier, thicker, pressing into my chest. Finally, I forced myself to move. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and dialed my mother. My thumb trembled when I hit the call button, but there was still a small, desperate hope inside me. She doesn't know. If I tell her, she'll stop this. She has to stop this. The call rang 3 times before she picked up. "I'm here. What's going on, Lucia?" Her voice was steady, not worried, not rushed, just steady. "Mom," I said, my throat tight, "Brian just kicked me out of the house." I waited for her sharp intake of breath, for the outraged, "He did what?" Silence, then she said quietly, "I know." Those 2 words knocked the air out of my lungs. "You know?" My voice cracked. "You knew and you didn't do anything? How could you let him do this to me?" Even then, some part of me still clung to the fantasies that she'd say, "No, this went too far. Come back inside." Instead, she sighed and her voice dropped colder, detached. "Lucia, you're 18 now. It's time for you to be independent. Brian's just doing what needs to be done." "Independent?" I repeated, dizzy. "Throwing me out like garbage is your idea of independence?" She didn't answer right away. The The silence stretched between us, long and sharp. Finally, she said in that same tired final tone, "Brian's right, you need to grow up." Something inside me stopped moving. Not my heart exactly, just the part that still believed she'd always choose me. I swallowed hard, tried one last time. You know it's my birthday today, right?" There was the faintest sound, a quick breath on the line. Then she replied, flat and empty, like an automated message, "Happy birthday." And the call ended. The screen went dark in my hand. For a second, all I could see was my own reflection staring back at me. Wide eyes, damp lashes, a girl who no longer had a home. In that moment, something bitterly simple became clear. My mother had made her choice. Not the right thing. Not her daughter. She chose the man she shared a bed with over the girl she once swore she'd never abandon. And me? I was left on the porch with a dusty backpack and the last pieces of whatever illusion I'd had left about family. I don't know how long I stood there before the next instinct kicked in. When you have no one else left to trust, you go to the one person who has never looked at you like a burden. I scrolled through my contacts and tapped Uncle Robert, my dad's younger brother. We only saw each other a few times a year, but he was the only adult who ever looked at me like I was a person, not a problem. He picked up on the second ring. "Lucia, what's wrong?" I didn't even get through half the story before he said, "Stay where you are. I'm coming." About 30 minutes later, his old sedan pulled up in front of the house. He stepped out, took one look at me, red eyes, backpack at my feet, and his jaw tightened. "Get in the car," he said gently. Then he added, "But hang on a second." He pulled out his phone and dialed my mother. He put it on speaker. "Linda, I'm with Lucia," he said, his voice calm, but edged with steel. "She tells me Brian kicked her out of the house. What the hell is going on?" On the other end, my mother's voice was clipped, irritated. "This is my family's business, Robert. Stay out of it." He let out a humorless little laugh. "All right then," he said. "Consider this your missed chance to apologize to Lucia. I'll bet you anything you'll be the one leaving that house sooner than you think." I felt something loosen in my chest at his words. Not because it fixed anything, but because for the first time today, someone was standing next to me instead of against me. He hung up and looked at me. "Come on, kid," he said softly. "You're not sleeping on a porch tonight. There's always room for you at my place." That evening, around 7 p.m., I found myself sitting in the warm dining room of Uncle Robert and Aunt Helen's house. The smell of chicken curry drifted from the kitchen. Framed photos lined the walls, birthdays, school plays, vacations where people actually looked happy. "You've lost weight, Lucia," Aunt Helen said, handing me a glass of water. Her smile was gentle but firm, the kind that made you feel both seen and safe. "No one cooking properly for you over there, huh?" I managed a weak smile. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She already knew. A moment later, their daughters, my little cousins, Jenna and Ellie, came tumbling down the stairs, hugging stuffed animals to their chests. "Is Lucia staying, Mom?" Jenna asked, eyes bright. "She can sleep in our room if she wants. We always sleep together anyway. She can be our special guest." "I can sleep on the couch," I said quickly. "It's fine, really." Aunt Helen waved that away like it was nonsense. "No one in this house is just a guest," she said. "Your family. We'll make it work." That night, I ate dinner with a family that wasn't perfect but felt safe. A family that didn't see me as a bargaining chip or a burden. Halfway through the meal, Uncle Robert set his chopsticks down and looked at me. "Lucia," he said, "there are some things you need to know about that house, about what your grandfather left behind." My spoon paused halfway to my mouth. "What do you mean?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. His eyes grew distant, heavier. "Finish your dinner first," he said quietly. "But tonight, I need you to listen closer than you ever have." Later, when the dishes were done and the house had gone soft and quiet, he made us both coffee and led me into the living room. I sat in an armchair, still wearing my jacket even though the room was warm. I wasn't used to this kind of comfort yet. "Lucia," he began slowly, "have you ever wondered why that house was already there when you were little? Who really bought it?" I shrugged faintly. "I just thought it was Mom's, or something Dad left behind." Uncle Robert shook his head. "No, that house originally belonged to your grandfather." A strange tightness bloomed in my chest. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Before he passed, your grandfather wrote a will. He left that house to you, Lucia Bradford." The words didn't make sense at first. They hung in the air between us, heavy, waiting for me to catch up. He went on, voice low and steady. "When your grandfather died, you were only 8. So, legally, temporary guardianship over the property was handed to your parents. Everything was documented, notarized, no disputes." He looked down for a moment, then back at me. 2 years later, your dad died. The stroke was fast. There was no time for instructions, no time to change anything. After that, your mother was the only adult left with access to the paperwork. My heartbeat slowed, each beat thick and deliberate. Then Brian showed up, Uncle Robert said quietly, and slowly, no one talked about the will anymore. No one said who the house really belonged to, and you just grew up there, never knowing your name was on it all along. I sat there, unable to move. No anger, no tears, just my hands gripping the armrests so tightly, the veins on the backs of my hands stood out. Uncle Robert reached into the coffee table drawer and pulled out a thin folder, its edges worn with time. "This is a copy of the will," he said. "I kept one ever since your grandfather passed. You should have known this sooner, but sometimes people hide the truth until the day you're old enough to have the right to hear it." I took the folder with cold hands. On the top page, in bold letters, was my name, Lucia Bradford. And in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. Nothing in my life was ever going to be the same again. Before I could say anything, the light suddenly went out. For a second, I thought it was a power cut. I glanced around in confusion. Then, from the kitchen, a small warm glow appeared, candlelight. Soft at first, then growing brighter as shadows shifted around the doorway. A familiar melody began, gentle and slightly off-key, but perfect in its sincerity. "Happy birthday to you." I turned. There they were, Uncle Robert, Aunt Helen, Jenna, and Ellie, standing around the coffee table with a small cake in the center, 3 crooked candles flickering. "Happy birthday, Lucia," Aunt Helen said, her eyes warm. "We weren't going to let you spend it alone." I didn't know whether to smile or cry. So I did both, quietly. In the dark, lit only by the soft, trembling glow of candles, and the first real feeling of belonging I had ever known. And as I closed my eyes to make a wish, one thought rose above the rest. If this house really is mine, I'm going to take it back. Some birthdays end with parties and glittery photos on social media. Mine ended with a will, a dark living room, and 4 people singing to me like I hadn't just been disowned a few hours earlier. After we finished the cake, the lights came back on with a small electric click. The room returned to normal, but I didn't. Inside, everything felt rearranged. I helped Aunt Helen clear the plates, more out of habit than anything else. Jenna and Ellie ran off with leftover frosting on their fingers, giggling about who blew the candles harder. For a moment, I just watched them and wondered, what would my life have looked like if I'd grown up in a house like this instead? "Lucia," Uncle Robert called softly from the living room. "Can we talk a bit more?" Aunt Helen gave me a gentle pat on the shoulder. "I'll make some tea," she said. "Go sit. You've had a long day." I followed Uncle Robert back to the armchair by the window. The night outside was calm. A porch light across the street flickered lazily. He sat opposite me, the thin folder with the will still lying on the glass coffee table. For a few seconds, we just listened to the ticking of the wall clock. "Do you understand what this means?" he finally asked. I stared at my name on the document. "That the house is mine?" I said slowly, almost afraid to say it out loud. He nodded. "Your grandfather wanted to make sure you'd always have a roof over your head," he said. "He didn't trust how things might go if anything happened to your father. He told me that himself." I swallowed hard. "So Mom knew?" I asked, "this whole time?" His eyes dimmed. "She had to," he said. "She signed the guardianship papers. She knew the property wasn't hers. She was only a caretaker until you turned 18. Caretaker. The word tasted bitter. "And Brian," I forced out, "does he know?" "I don't know when he found out," Uncle Robert admitted. "But I know this much. Once he came into the picture, he was very comfortable acting like that house belonged to him." I thought about Brian's face on the porch. The arrogance. The certainty. The way he'd said, "my house," like it was written in his blood. My hands clenched into fists in my lap. "All this time," I whispered, "I thought I was just some extra mouth to feed, someone they tolerated because I was there. But the house, it was mine, and they still made me feel like a burden." Uncle Robert leaned forward, his voice softening. "Lucia, listen to me," he said. "That feeling you've carried all these years, that you were somehow too much, too expensive, too inconvenient, that wasn't the truth. That was their guilt, their selfishness, dripping into your mind little by little. They twisted your reality so you wouldn't ask questions." My chest tightened. I suddenly remembered moments that hadn't seemed important before. Mom complaining about the cost of utilities. Brian reminding me that this roof isn't free. Casey joking that I was always taking up space. A slow burn started in my stomach. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, looking up at him. There was no accusation in my voice, just a raw, aching need to understand. If you had a copy of the will, why wait until now? He exhaled, shoulders slumping a little. Because you were a kid, he said honestly, and your mother was still your legal guardian. If I'd tried to interfere back then, she could have cut off contact with you entirely. I kept the copy in case something like this happened. I was hoping it wouldn't. I looked down at the papers again. So what now? I asked. I just walk away? Let them keep living in my grandfather's house like nothing happened? Silence settled between us again. Somewhere in the kitchen, Aunt Helen clinked cups together. Jenna and Ellie's laughter drifted faintly from upstairs. Uncle Robert's voice cut through the quiet, calm, but firm. No, he said. Now we do things properly. We do things legally. Tomorrow morning, I'm taking you to see the attorney who drafted this will. His name is Mr. Stevens. He'll help you figure out the next step. You're not handling this alone. The thought of walking back to that house, facing Mom and Brian and Casey again, made my stomach twist. At the same time, another feeling rose, low and steady. Resolve. For the first time in my life, I had proof. Real, legal proof that I wasn't crazy. That I wasn't ungrateful or demanding or too much. I had been robbed, and I wanted my life back. Much later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on the edge of the guest bed with my phone in my hand. I had ignored Evan's messages earlier. Now there were more. Evan. Hey, birthday girl, everything okay? Evan. You didn't answer my meme. I'm offended. Evan. Lucia? I'm getting worried. Call me when you can, okay? I stared at his name for a long time. Evan. With his stupid jokes and warm hands, his habit of over-explaining movie plots, his careless, I've got you, don't worry texts when I panicked about exams. I hit call. He answered almost immediately. Lucia, finally, you scared me. What's going on? The moment I heard his voice, everything I'd been holding back all day threatened to spill out. But I didn't want to dump the whole wreckage on him at once. I'm at my uncle's, I said slowly. Brian kicked me out. Mom let him. There was a shocked pause. Then, he what? Evan snapped. He can't do that. Wait, are you safe? Do you need me to come get you? You can stay at my place. I'll kick my roommate off the couch if I have to. I almost laughed. Almost. I'm safe, I said. Uncle Robert took me in. It's complicated. I'll tell you more later. Just know I'm okay, all right? Okay, he said quietly, anger still simmering under his words. But Lucia, you don't deserve this. Whatever they're saying, whatever they made you feel, you don't deserve any of it. My throat tightened. Thank you, I whispered. We talked for a few more minutes, about nothing and everything, until the weight of the day pulled me down. After I hung up, I lay there in the dark, staring at the faint light leaking under the door. At some point, a thought crystallized so clearly it almost felt like someone else had spoken it. I'm done being the quiet, grateful, obedient girl in someone else's house. Tomorrow I would start becoming something else. The next morning, the air felt strangely sharp, like the world was cleaner somehow. After breakfast, Uncle Robert poured me a cup of coffee and slid the folder toward me again. Ready? He asked. No, I thought, but I nodded anyway. Yeah, I said, let's do this. The attorney's office was downtown, housed inside an old, dignified building with tall windows and worn stone steps. We walked down a long hallway until we stopped at a door with a simple plaque. Harold Stevens, attorney at law. Uncle Robert knocked. A voice from inside said, "Come in." The man behind the wooden desk looked like he'd been carved out of the very same building. Mid-50s, gray at the temples, glasses perched low on his nose, eyes sharp and alert. "Robert," he said, standing to shake my uncle's hand. "And this must be Lucia." "Yes," Uncle Robert said. "She's the one I told you about." Mr. Stevens turned his attention to me. His handshake was firm, his gaze steady. "Lucia," he said, "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Please sit down. Tell me everything from the beginning." I sat in the chair opposite his desk and, for the second time in less than 24 hours, told the story of my own life. This time I didn't soften anything. I told him about my father's death, about Brian moving in, about the years of subtle comments, the constant reminders that I was lucky to have a roof over my head. I told him about the porch, the backpack, the birthday, about my mother's voice saying, "Brian's right. You need to grow up." About Uncle Robert's folder, the will, my name on it. Mr. Stevens listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes in a neat, compact handwriting. When I finally fell silent, he adjusted his glasses and opened the folder. "This is my work," he said after a moment, tapping the will. I remember your grandfather very well. Stubborn man, but fair. He was very clear. He wanted this property to go to you, Lucia. Not to your father, not to your mother, to you. My breath caught. What does that mean legally? I asked. He looked up, his tone turning resolute. It means, he said, that you are the rightful owner of that house. Not your mother, not Brian, not their daughter, you. The room seemed to constrict, like the walls moved closer. So I can ask them to leave? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You can require them to leave, he corrected. And if they refuse, we can involve the authorities. But I usually recommend starting with an official notice, followed by a formal visit, which is why he closed the folder and folded his hands on the desk. I'm going to suggest we go together. Together? I repeated. Yes, he said. I will go to the house with you and Robert. As your attorney, I will present the will and make your position clear. If they resist, we escalate. But you won't stand there alone. Something in my chest loosened. For so long, every confrontation at that house had been me versus everyone. Now, for the first time, I had people beside me, people who understood law, who weren't afraid of Brian's temper or my mother's guilt-laden accusations. Are you sure? I asked, my fingers twisting in my lap. It's a lot of trouble. Mr. Stevens gave a small, almost amused exhale. Lucia, he said gently, this is my job, and frankly, your grandfather trusted me to make sure this will meant something. I think it's time we honor that. He stood, reached for a leather briefcase under his desk, and slipped the folder inside. Shall we? He asked. I stood up on legs that felt both weak and strangely strong at the same time. As we walked out of the office, sunlight streamed through the tall windows in the hallway. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass. Same brown hair, same tired eyes, but there was something different in my posture. I wasn't just the girl who got kicked out on her birthday anymore. I was the girl going back. The girl taking her house, her name, her life, back into her own hands. Out on the sidewalk, Uncle Robert unlocked the car. Mr. Stevens checked his watch. An hour, maybe less, he said matter-of-factly. We'll present the will. We'll see how they react. And from there, we proceed, properly. I looked toward the direction of the house. The same route I'd taken yesterday on the bus, head full of modest hopes. Now, my hands tightened around the strap of my bag. I'm ready, I said. I wasn't, not really. But for the first time in my life, I wanted to be. We got into the car and pulled away from the curb. As buildings slipped past the window, one thought kept looping in my mind, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. This is my house, and today they're going to hear that out loud. The closer we drove to the house, the more tightly my chest constricted. Every familiar intersection brought back a memory I hadn't asked for. Mom rushing me to school after I overslept in 5th grade. Brian teaching Casey to drive in the cul-de-sac while mocking me for being a slow learner. Me watching from the upstairs window the night my dad's ambulance pulled away. That house wasn't just walls and a roof, it was a battlefield. And now I was going back, not as a scared girl, but as the owner. Mr. Stevens sat beside me in the back seat, calm as granite, his briefcase resting against his leg. Uncle Robert drove, quiet but alert, like he was preparing for a storm. My fingers kept tracing the edge of the will inside the folder on my lap. Every time I started to doubt myself, the embossed print of my name steadied me. Lucia Bradford. Legal heir. Rightful owner. When we turned onto my old street, my pulse thudded so loudly I thought the others might actually hear it. The house came into view. The faded white paint, the crooked mailbox, the small garden my dad used to tend before everything crumbled. I felt something sharp twist under my ribs. This is the last time you approach this house like someone who needs permission to be here, Uncle Robert said quietly, not taking his eyes off the road. From today on, you walk in like you belong. Because I did. We pulled into the driveway and stepped out. I held the folder so tightly its edges dug into my palm. Ready? Mr. Stevens asked. I nodded, though part of me wanted to run. Uncle Robert knocked. Not aggressively, but firmly. A knock that said we're not here for nonsense. Footsteps approached. The door opened. My mother stood there first. Her face froze when she saw me, then tightened into something between confusion and guilt. Lucia, she breathed, what are you doing here? Before I could answer, Brian appeared behind her, jaw clenching the second he saw my uncle and Mr. Stevens. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. I stepped forward. I came home, I said simply. His expression twisted. This is not your home, Brian snapped. You don't get to walk in and out whenever you feel like it. He stopped when Mr. Stevens stepped forward with total calm. Good afternoon, he said, his voice polite, but edged with unmistakable authority. "I'm Harold Stevens, attorney representing Ms. Lucia Bradford. I'm here regarding the will left by her grandfather." My mother's eyes flickered, panic threading through them. Brian's shoulders stiffened. Mr. Stevens opened his briefcase, pulled out the will, and held it where they could both see. "As per this legally binding document," he said, "the property you are currently occupying belongs solely to Lucia Bradford. As of her 18th birthday, she has full rights to reclaim possession." The silence that followed hit like a shockwave. My mother's face drained of color. Brian stared at the document like it was a personal betrayal. Then Mom whispered, voice quivering, "Lucia, no, this can't be." "It is," Mr. Stevens said. "The document has been verified, notarized, and recognized by county records." Brian barked a humorless laugh. "This is a joke. You're lying. That house was Linda's, not—" "It was never hers," Mr. Stevens interrupted, still perfectly calm. "She was a temporary guardian until Lucia turned 18. My mother's knees wobbled. She steadied herself on the doorframe. "Lucia," she pleaded. "Sweetheart, listen. This is our home. You can't—" "No," I said quietly. Her words died in her throat. "This isn't your home," I said. "It never was, and you know that." Brian stepped forward abruptly, anger radiating off him. "You think you can throw us out?" he growled. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Before I could react, Uncle Robert moved. He stepped directly between Brian and me, shoulders squared, eyes hard. "You take one more step toward her," Uncle Robert said, voice low and dangerous, "and I swear, Brian, you will regret it." Brian froze. He wasn't used to being challenged like that. For a moment, the entire doorway pulsed with tension. Then, a sharp voice cut through the air. "What is going on here?" Casey came stomping down the stairs, her phone in her hand, her jaw already set in anger. When she saw me, she rolled her eyes. "Oh, look," she sneered, "the runaway birthday girl." "What? Did you come back for your toothbrush?" I didn't react. I was too tired, too changed. "But Mr. Stevens did." "I advise you to keep your comments respectful," he said, turning to her with icy precision. "As of this moment, anything you say may become part of legal documentation." Casey blinked, startled. Brian glared at him. "You can't just come here and threaten my daughter." "No threats," Mr. Stevens said. "Just facts." He closed his briefcase and looked directly at my mother. "Per legal instruction, I am informing you and Mr. Whitaker that you no longer have the right to remain on this property." My mother's lips trembled. "Lucia," she whispered again, desperate, "please don't do this. I'm your mother. You can't just—" "Yes," I said softly, feeling something inside me click into place. "I can." Her breath caught. "You chose him over me," I continued. "You let him throw me out on my birthday. You didn't protect me. You didn't care." Every word tasted like years of swallowed pain finally being released. "You stopped being my mother long before today." She covered her mouth with her hand, shaking. Brian burst out, "We're not leaving. If you want us out so badly, go ahead, call the cops." He slammed the door shut in our faces. The moment it closed, my heartbeat steadied. "All right," Mr. Stevens said, already reaching for his phone. "Then we call the police." 20 minutes later, 2 state police officers pulled up in their patrol car. Mom, Brian, and Casey stood in the living room as the officers listened to Mr. Stevens outline the will, the guardianship, the recorded documentation, and the fact that the house had always belonged to me. The officers checked the records on their tablet. One nodded. "No rental agreement? No lawful claim to ownership? No transfer of rights?" All answers no. "All right," the officer said, turning to my mother and Brian. "Legally, you need to vacate the property." Brian exploded. "What? No, this is bull—" "Sir," the officer warned sharply, "do not escalate." Mom's voice was small, trembling. Please give us a few days. Before she could finish, I stepped forward. "You didn't give me a few days." Everyone turned. My voice was steady. "You kicked me out in seconds." Brian scoffed. "There's no proof of that." "Yes," I said, "there is." I pulled out my phone, opened the porch security camera feed Uncle Robert had helped me retrieve last night, and tapped play. The footage showed everything. Brian yanking my backpack, throwing it out the door, slamming the gate. The timestamp clearly read 3:00 p.m. One of the officers frowned at the date and time. Mr. Stevens suddenly went still. Then he reached into his briefcase, pulled out my birth certificate, and held it up. Lucia was born at exactly 5:00 p.m. on this date 18 years ago. The officer's eyes widened. "So, at 3 p.m. yesterday?" "She was still a minor," Mr. Stevens said firmly. The room froze. Brian paled. Mom swayed on her feet. Casey's mouth fell open. The officer straightened. "That changes everything," he said. "Kicking out a minor is illegal. Had we been called yesterday, this would have been a criminal case. Silence swallowed the room. My mother whispered my name like a prayer. Brian clenched his fists. Casey looked like she wanted to scream. Mr. Stevens turned to me and said quietly, "Lucia, do you want to press charges?" The entire house held its breath. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Brian stared at me like I'd become something dangerous. Casey shook her head, trembling. The old me would have hesitated, would have softened, would have backed down. But the new me? I took a long breath. "I want them out," I said. "Today. But I'm not pressing charges." My mother sagged in relief, shoulders shaking. Brian's jaw clenched. The officers nodded. "Pack essentials," one said. "You have 1 hour." Casey exploded. 1 hour? Are you kidding me? You're letting her do this? She's just... "Ma'am," the officer said sharply. "That's enough." The hour that followed was suffocating. My mother and Brian moved stiffly, silently, packing clothes and documents. Casey stormed in and out of rooms like a hurricane, glaring daggers at me. I stood in the doorway, Uncle Robert beside me, Mr. Stevens a few feet behind. Not speaking, not gloating, just reclaiming. When the hour ended, I stepped forward. "That's enough," I said softly. "Anything you didn't pack will be placed outside in 3 days. You can pick it up then." My mother's chin trembled as she whispered, "I never meant for it to be like this." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Neither did I said, "but here we are." She didn't answer. They walked out with their bags, defeated, stunned, and silent. The door clicked shut behind them. And for the first time in my life, the house was quiet because it was finally mine. Just as I took a breath, absorbing that reality, my phone buzzed. A new notification. A new storm waiting. But that part comes later. For now, I just stood there, in the middle of the living room, feeling like I had finally stepped into my own skin. For the first few seconds after the door closed behind them, I just stood there, motionless, listening to the quiet settle into the house like dust. It wasn't peaceful, not yet. The silence felt heavy, foreign, like a stranger sitting beside me, waiting to see what I would do next. Uncle Robert placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. "You did well," he said softly. "Better than I expected, honestly." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like a winner. I felt emptied out. The kind of tired that doesn't live in the body but in the bones. Mr. Stevens cleared his throat gently. "Lucia, if you're ready, we'll go over next steps," he said. "The legal process isn't done, not until the title transfer clears and the county records reflect you as the sole owner." I nodded automatically. "Okay." But before we began anything, Uncle Robert locked the front door, turned to me, and said, "Before you learn how to protect your property, you need to learn how to protect your peace. Sit down for a moment." So I did. Right in the same living room where I'd once been lectured for using too much electricity or for not vacuuming the stairs fast enough. Now, that room felt different. It was still suffocating, but in a way that meant I could breathe it out little by little. We sat together while Mr. Stevens contacted the county office on his phone. I didn't hear much of what he said, just fragments between the haze fogging my mind. An authorized heir? Immovable property. No contest filed. When he hung up, he addressed me with crisp clarity. "As long as no one disputes the will in court, which, given the evidence, would be incredibly unwise on their part, the house will be legally, indisputably yours." I nodded again, still processing. Uncle Robert approached me with a glass of water. "Drink," he said. "You look like your nerves are vibrating." He wasn't wrong. I sipped the water quietly, staring at the worn carpet, remembering all the times I'd sat here as a child watching Mom braid my hair or complaining about Dad being late from work. Funny how a house can hold memories you never asked for. After a few deep breaths, Mr. Stevens gestured toward my backpack on the floor. "Lucia, do you want to look around the house now? Check for anything you need to secure? Or would you rather wait?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "I want to go through it now, before I lose the courage." They exchanged a quick glance, then nodded. "All right," Uncle Robert said gently. "We'll go with you." The house inspection. Walking through the house felt like walking through a museum of ghosts. The entryway still smelled faintly of Brian's cologne. Casey's sneakers were thrown carelessly near the bottom of the stairs. The kitchen counters were cluttered with half-used spices and unwashed mugs. Mom's mug was still in the sink, a cracked yellow one that said "World's Best Mom." I stared at it for a long moment, then turned away. We checked each room methodically. Bathrooms, closets, storage cabinets, the little laundry nook. I wasn't surprised to find that Brian had taken some things he wasn't supposed to. A few tools from the garage, a pair of speakers bought with my father's money. Mr. Stevens photographed everything. documenting what was missing. "We can recover these later if you want," he said, but I shook my head. I don't want anything from them except distance. Upstairs was harder. My old bedroom was still empty from the moment I'd been thrown out. The sheets were wrinkled, the closet door hung open, the lamp on the bedside table had a crack through the shade. It looked like someone had already begun imagining themselves living here. I pushed the door wider and stepped inside. The walls still had faint marks where I'd once taped posters. The window still rattled slightly when the wind hit it. "This room is yours again," Uncle Robert said behind me. The words felt unreal. I looked around, half expecting Casey to burst in and shove me out, claiming the space like she had on the porch. But the room was empty, silent. "Mine. I don't think I even know how to sleep in here anymore," I murmured. "You will," Aunt Helen said softly from behind the doorway. She had joined us quietly, carrying a small box of cleaning supplies. "But not today, not until we make this space yours again." I felt tears prick at my eyes. I blinked them away and whispered, "Thank you." An unexpected knock. We had just returned downstairs when a hard knock rattled the front door. 3 sharp, impatient hits. I froze. Uncle Robert's expression darkened. Mr. Stevens immediately stepped ahead of me. He opened the door cautiously. Standing there was Casey, face flushed, eyes blazing. She was alone. "Take a step back," Mr. Stevens said calmly, blocking most of the doorway with his body. Casey shook with fury. "I want my charger," she snapped, "and my conditioner, and Dad's watch, and you can't just—" "You had 1 hour," Mr. Stevens said. "You used it. The remaining belongings will be placed outside in 3 days." "3 days?" she shrieked. "You're treating us like criminals." Uncle Robert stepped forward. "You threatened Lucia earlier," he said. "You insulted her, on camera. Trust me, this is the best deal you're getting." Casey's eyes darted past them to me. "Are you proud of yourself?" she spat. "Kicking your own mother out? You're sick. You're actually sick." My chest tightened, but I stood straight. "You don't get to talk to me about family," I said quietly. "Not after everything you helped them do." Her face twisted. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You think you're the hero here? Just wait till people find out what really happened." Mr. Stevens stepped between us fully. "You need to leave now." Casey opened her mouth, but one look at him, and the police still parked down the street, made her pause. She muttered something vicious under her breath and stormed off the porch, stomping down the driveway. The moment she disappeared, I exhaled shakily. "That won't be the last time she tries something," Uncle Robert said. "But you handled her well." Did I? I wasn't sure. But I didn't break. And maybe that was enough. The aftermath. By late afternoon, the officers had left. Mr. Stevens had filed the immediate possession notice. The locks had been changed by a local locksmith Uncle Robert called, and I stood there inside a house that finally, legally, belonged to me. When Mr. Stevens finished packing up, he approached me with a softer expression than before. "Lucia," he said, "you did something incredibly difficult today. You stood up for yourself against people who expected you to stay silent. That isn't easy for anyone, especially not at 18. I lowered my gaze, overwhelmed. "You'll sleep at our house tonight," Aunt Helen said, rubbing my back. "This place needs to air out. Tomorrow we'll start fresh." I nodded gratefully. As we all stepped out of the house together, Uncle Robert locking the door behind us, something caught my attention. My phone vibrated. A notification. From a social media app I barely used. A username I recognized instantly. Chloe Morgan Evans' ex-girlfriend. A single message preview glowed on the screen. "Wow, so you really threw your own mother out? People are already talking about it. Good luck hiding now." My stomach dropped. A new storm was beginning. A public one. And it would shake everything I'd just fought to rebuild. I didn't open the message right away. Not because I was afraid of what it said, but because I already knew the shape of the storm it carried. I'd dealt with private cruelty my whole life. Whispered comments, quiet dismissals, cold shoulders. Public cruelty, though? That was newer, louder, and it hits differently when it has an audience. As Uncle Robert drove us back to his house that evening, my phone kept buzzing. One notification, then another, then dozens. A knot tightened in my stomach. Aunt Helen noticed. "You don't have to look at those tonight, sweetheart," she said gently. But I knew I had to. I had to face whatever version of the story was already spreading. When we got back to their house, I excused myself and went to the quiet guest room. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I finally unlocked my phone. The first thing I saw was a flurry of posts, screenshots, comments. Someone had leaked the story. Not the truth, not the will, just a distorted headline version. 18-year-old kicks her own mother out of her home on the same day she turns 18. Ungrateful or justified? Speak your mind. And people did speak their minds. Thousands of them. Some comments defended me, vaguely, cautiously. We don't know the whole story. Parents aren't always right. Sometimes protecting yourself is the right thing. But most comments were brutal. Ungrateful brat. Imagine doing that to your own mother. Kids these days have no respect. This girl deserves karma. And then there were the ones that hit too close. Maybe the mother had reasons. Probably a mooch living off her family. If the stepfather kicked her out, she must have done something. Each comment felt like a pebble tossed at a window. Small, but sharp, relentless. I scrolled further. There she was. Chloe Morgan, my boyfriend Evan's ex. A girl with a perfect Instagram smile and an oversized talent for drama. She'd left comments under multiple threads. I knew her from campus. She's manipulative. She lies a lot, so don't believe everything she says. She treats people like tools. I'm not surprised she'd betray her own mom. My heartbeat stuttered. We weren't friends, not even close, but we'd been civil, or so I thought. Seeing her name, her lies, splashed across a trending thread felt like betrayal layered on top of betrayal. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I saw another comment from Chloe. I feel bad for Evan. He deserves better than her. The knot in my stomach twisted painfully. It took only seconds for other people to start tagging him, dragging him into it, pointing fingers his way. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. Not him, not now. A soft knock sounded at the door. Lucia, Evan's voice whispered. It's me. My breath hitched. I opened the door. There he stood, hair messy, hoodie half-zipped, eyes wide with worry. He must have driven over the moment he saw the explosion online. You okay? He asked, stepping inside and shutting the door behind him. No, I wasn't. But I didn't break. I saw what people are saying, he said, and what Chloe wrote. Lucia, I don't believe any of it. The relief that washed through me was warm but fragile. Why is she doing this? I whispered. He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. She's been weird since we broke up. When she found out I was seeing you, she started posting things. Subtle jabs, stuff like that. So she hates me, I muttered. No, he said, stepping closer. She hates that I moved on, with someone better. My eyes burned. You really think that? I asked quietly. He didn't hesitate. I know that. And suddenly, the weight of the entire day hit me at once. I broke down, not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet cracks in the armor I'd been forcing over my heart. Evan pulled me into his arms and I let him. I'm here, he murmured. I'm not going anywhere. I believed him. But love, I had learned, didn't erase pain. It didn't silence the world outside. It didn't fix the fractures inside me. Still, his presence was a soft place to fall, and I needed that, just for a moment. 4 months later, the house has been fully transferred into my name. The county records updated. The keys, mine alone. Mom, Brian, and Casey have never contacted me. No apologies, no explanations, no attempts to rebuild anything. And honestly, I'm grateful. Silence from the wrong people is sometimes the loudest piece you'll ever hear. Life now is steady. I go to classes. I study on the couch. I cook simple meals in a kitchen that no longer feels hostile. Sometimes Evan comes over and we watch movies on the battered old sofa. The house feels different now. Lighter, breathable, mine. But not everything has healed. People still argue online about whether I was right or wrong. Some think I'm brave. Some think I'm cruel. Some think I'm a monster. A year ago, the backlash would have crushed me. Now, it just reminds me of something important. Strangers don't get to define me. Their opinions don't get to outweigh my truth. Their criticism doesn't get to undo my survival. I learned the hard way that family isn't about DNA or last names. Family is who shows up, who protects you, who loves you without conditions. People like Uncle Robert, Aunt Helen, Jenna and Ellie, Evan. They're my family, not the ones who locked me out of my own house.